Former President Jacob Zuma has defended a proposed nuclear energy deal during his term of office. Speaking to a newspaper, he said the country would have spent trillions if it went ahead, but over a short period of time, and would have been able to make money in return. Zuma is adamant it would have solved the current energy shortfalls. But Treasury stated the deal would be unaffordable and unsustainable. Joining us now to discuss this is Enertrag SA CEO Dr. Tobias Bischof-Niemz. Dr. Bischof-Niemz, thanks very much for your time. I don't know, from available literature and from what experts like you have been saying, I mean, across the world, it's a stop-start affair to build a nuclear power station. Not only that, I mean, on average, it takes close to 10 years.
Yes, well, to build a nuclear power station, once you've started with construction, and that's really when you put the first spade into the ground, that's you can see anything between 5 to 8 years, and in some cases much longer than that. So the current integrated resource plan assumes an 8-year construction time. But before you start construction, of course, you need to procure the power station, and that whole procurement process in itself takes a lead time. So you can safely say if you start procurement today, you will have a nuclear power station in 10 years from now.
Yes, I mean, our own Quebec, I mean, each one of the 2 units took almost 10 years to build.
Yes, the total. The construction time was a bit shorter than the 10 years, but together with the procurement, it's in that range, yes.
Now, and as other people have said before, it's not only the time that it takes to, one, procure, as you point out, and then the additional years it takes to actually build that should be taken into account. There's also huge overruns that come with that. We've seen this happening with regard to the Medupi and Kusile power stations.
Well, that's something that lies in the nature of mega projects, and by definition, to build a nuclear power station, even if it contains only 2 units, is a mega project. And it is possible to run a mega project within time and within budget. No doubt that it's in principle possible, but the likelihood of being able to achieve that are much smaller than for smaller projects, more granular projects where you roll out the same capacity and the same energy availability in a more granular approach. It's simply a spreading of risk if you do it in many smaller projects as opposed to one big one.
Well, considering the fact that continue.
If I may add that, I mean, the nuclear new build program that was under discussion for the last couple of years stems from the Integrated Resource Plan 2010. And in the Integrated Resource Plan 2010, we had 9.6 gigawatt of new nuclear plant. As per that plan, the first reactor of that fleet would have come online in 2023. So even if we had implemented the IRP 2010, which is outdated for a number of reasons, as per the plan, the first reactor would come online in 4 years from now.
In other words, the former president isn't really speaking the truth then, because in terms of, as you have just pointed out, the government's own timelines, none. I mean, even if we had gone ahead with the proposal that was being bandied about, it would not have resolved the crisis that we are in currently. So it's wrong.
The current crisis right now would have been absolutely unaffected by any nuclear procurement program had it started 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Well, something else I sort of wanted to ask, but given the inherent dangers that come with fossil fuels, like coal, which we rely heavily on at the moment, nuclear is still more preferable. Is that correct?
Yes, nuclear is definitely a clean source of electricity. There's no doubt about that. no CO2 emissions. There are other associated emissions that are affecting people's health from burning of fossil fuel. That is 100% correct. It's purely for nuclear. It's a matter of cost, and the cost, even in the best case, if we assume the best case, no time overruns, no cost overruns, then the cost of building nuclear are prohibitively expensive compared to the alternatives that we have today. And today we have clean alternatives that are likewise not burning fossil fuels, like wind, like solar photovoltaic power generators. And they are roughly 50% cheaper per energy unit than to build a new nuclear plant. And that's under an optimistic assumption for a nuclear build program.
Well, speaking of which, I had a discussion with 3 political parties last night, and at least one of them suggested that we could get out of the current quagmire, as it were, by simply getting the people who have alternative sources of energy supply to come on stream. Is that true, though? Is that a solution to the current crisis that we're facing?
Well, I think you basically have to look at the merit order of possible options on the supply side, where clearly we have a lack on the supply side and we need to increase the available capacity on the supply side. So the first priority, if we get the availability of the existing ESCOM fleet increased, but that's what the technical task team is working on. The second one is we have to build new power generators. Now, when it comes to new power generators, to increase the supply side, what are the options that are quickly implementable? Any large procurement program will take a lead time. Doesn't mean we shouldn't start it, but it will take time. But what the solution that will bring new capacity onto the grid in the fastest possible manner is if we open the regulatory barriers that currently exist for self-consumption power station that customers, electricity customers, would build themselves behind the meter. I'm not just talking about residential rooftop solar installations, but also about larger installations of commercial and industrial customers in the up to 10 megawatt size. So if you open that market to the 10 megawatt, there's more than 2 gigawatt of applications sitting with the regulator for this very granular, small-scale type of power generators, and they would be deployed in a matter of months.
Well, 2 things come into mind from what you've just said. One is what was said at the Public Enterprises ESCOM briefing, that as much as they are keen on bringing more alternative sources, it is a bit of the word tedious wasn't used, but that's the impression that I got, that to connect them to the grid and everything else that you would have to do to get it, to bring them on board, that's going to take a wee bit of time, and it doesn't necessarily resolve the crisis that we are in. That's one part. The second part is one of the people who are involved in the alternative energy sector that we spoke to said the key is there isn't a short supply of alternative sources of energy. What is the problem is the regulatory framework, because they can only supply so much and not quite what they are able to provide, which is much, much more than what the regulations provide for.
Well, I would agree with that. I would agree that it's mostly a regulatory barrier and really only to a small extent a technical barrier. Of course, if you build so-called small-scale embedded generators, then you have to have the technical standards in place. But a lot of technical work has been done on that in the last couple of years, actually. And the main barrier at the moment is the regulation, which simply stipulates that any new power generator connected to the grid that is greater than 1 megawatt needs a generation license. Now, a generation license, there's a whole tail of things that need to happen before you get a generation license, and that requirement on its own simply means that nobody will install a generator that's greater than 1 megawatt. But that's between 1 megawatt and 10 megawatt, that's really the the size where you can get a significant amount of capacity online quickly.
But what, though, is the rationale behind that long and involved and perhaps tedious process that people have to go through?
Well, I mean, the rationale comes from a time when the small-scale embedded generators were still where it might have made sense for customers already to install them, but they are, as a technology, like sort of solar photovoltaic, individual wind turbines, they might not have been part of the optimal mix from a system perspective. So therefore, you had to make sure that you don't open that market too bigly and too massively in order to have some control over it. But now, with the latest integrated resource plan from 2018, from last year, which is in the draft and in the final making, we see that a very large amount of solar photovoltaic and wind is needed in the power system anyway. So any of that technology that customers will now deploy on their own individually, it does not really deviate from what the least cost power expansion pathway would look like anyway.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Enertrag SA CEO Dr. Tobias Bischof-Niemz.